In today's Necron Tomb Blade video, I'm going to show you how to magnetise Tomb Blades with all three weapon options and the Wargear options. It's coming right up.
Necrons!
Nick speaking, and welcome to this video. And if you're new to the channel and you want to keep up to date with the Wonders of Warhammer 40k, then please subscribe and hit the bell button to turn on all notifications so you don't miss an upload. Okay, so today is the day where I show you how to magnetise Necron Tomb Blades. I've already made a how to build and a how to convert Tomb Blade video. I'll link you up to both of those videos in the description below. For today though, we're going to learn how to magnetise them. Okay, so Tomb Blades, here we go. We've got the instruction book here. I'm just going to run over a couple of points before we get going. So the first one is that my Tomb Blades are going to look slightly different than these here because I've converted them. I've basically taken the little ball away from where the warrior head is and put a different head in there and just changed it up a little bit. If you're interested in finding out how I did that, I've got a tutorial video on that, and I'll link that up in the comment section below and in the description. So there are three different gun options, as you can see from this picture here, and also we've got some Wargear options. Today I'm going to show you how to magnetise these three Wargear options and also all three gun options. Now the first thing to note is it's rather odd why GW have put the Tesla guns at the back of the vehicle and the Gauss guns at the front. In actual fact, there's absolutely no reason why these Tesla guns can't go at the front of the bike. Now I can only assume they've done that just to show you the option, so potentially you could use the front or the back. However, there's nowhere in the instruction book it actually says that you can exchange the guns from one position to the other. It's just indicated that you build the Tesla guns this way and the Gauss guns that way. It is a rather odd situation. Now of course the other gun is not twin linked, there's only one of them and that pretty much just goes on the front. Now you could magnetise the Tesla guns on the back and these on the front. It would entail a little bit more work. You'll have to basically magnetise these little fins so that they come off and go onto the front. However, I've decided I prefer the guns at the front because when the guns are on the back here, if you rotate them, the guns are going to be shooting the little fins at the front. It's going to be shooting themselves, which just doesn't make sense. So I think the gun really needs to be at the front, and I'm going to use that to my advantage of doing less magnetisation. Okay, so you can see I've got one Tomb Blade here ready to be magnetised. Of course, I've built some of it. The first thing to note is when you're building any model is you need to scrape off all of the mould lines, so don't forget to do that. So let's just run through the instructions here and I'll tell you what I have glued together and what I haven't. So effectively I've done the first section, page 1, totally built and glued together with the exception of this section here. I've glued the front onto this, but I've left this piece here just off, and the reason for that is we're going to have to put magnets into this, and it's going to be easier to hold this to drill holes rather than being placed actually on the model. So build up that section, and then on the next page build everything on here as per the instructions. Glue the warrior into position. This is one of the most trickiest parts to do, and I've actually made a video of an easy way to glue this warrior into the bike, so check that out if you're interested. Again, I'll link you up to that in the comments box and also in the description of this video. Now the only thing I haven't glued on in this part of the instruction book is this little front section which goes onto here, and the reason why I haven't glued that on is for painting purposes, because when you put this little piece onto here it covers up the little ball which he's holding onto, and that's going to make that very difficult to paint. So I've actually left that off only for painting purposes. I'm going to be painting my model with dry brushing, so having the warrior in there, for example, at this stage isn't going to be a problem for me. However, you may feel differently. You may want to paint before you assemble on some of these bits. Just have a look at the model and see how you feel about that. Right, next page is the weapons. So you need to build the Tesla carbines as per the instructions, fully build them. Build the particle beamer. However, on the particle beamer, don't glue that top section to the top, because if you do, it's going to make drilling holes much more difficult. So build the gun, but leave that section off. And on the next page, build the gauze cannons exactly like the instruction book says. Now, you'll notice this section down here, this of course is where the fin is going to go. Now, if you're going to magnetise your weapons onto the back section, which I'm not going to do, then again I'd advise you don't glue these bits in, because it will be easier to drill holes into that ball. However, like I said, I've built mine, I've actually glued them into position because all of my guns are going on the front of the vehicle. And then of course we come to the Wargear options, which we'll talk about more later, but I'm going to end up magnetising these as well. So just clip them off the sprues, take all the mould lines off, and we are ready to go. Now the only thing to note here is the shield veins, which are these sections here that give you the 3+ save. They are going to be almost, I say almost because nothing is impossible, but almost impossible to magnetise on. So I've actually glued my shield veins on here. I tend to use my tomb blades with the 3+ save anyway, so having the shield veins on there isn't a problem. Having said that, hardly anyone is going to know exactly what these Wargear options are. Even a Necron player, by the time he's built one, you know, a year later, he's probably going to forget what these Wargear options are supposed to be anyway. So, in all honesty, you could probably just pick the one which you like the look of best and actually just glue it into place. And when you're playing, you know, Wargear options, people aren't going to know what a shield vein is going to look like or a shadow loom. However, for this tutorial, I am going to magnetise them because I know some people like to have it fully WYSIWYG. However, like I said, these shield veins, it's almost impossible to magnetise them, and to be honest with you, they just look much better with these on rather than off. I mean, it's not the greatest model in the world, but without these shield veins on, it looks, well, even worse. Okay, so that's all done. So now we're going to have a look at what tools you're going to need to magnetise them. Okay, so first of all, we're going to need some magnets, of course. We're going to be using some 2x1mm Neo magnets, and these are going to be the maximum strength you can get. That's N52. Now, I get my magnets from a company called Guy's Magnets. They are a UK based company, but if you're in a different country, I'm sure you can find another source for magnets. So 2x1mm is going to be the main magnet that we are going to use. We are going to need some 1x2mm magnets as well, very small ones, but you're only going to need that if you plan on magnetising the particle beamer. If you don't plan on magnetising the particle beamer, then you'll only need the 2x1mm magnets. Now I've got a little magnet topper. This is just part of a child's toy with a magnet on the end, and this just allows me to work out which side the polarity is of the magnets to make sure I don't glue them into the wrong position. So we need some magnets, of course. We are also going to need some super glue. I'm using the Gorilla Gel super glue. We're going to need a little bit of kitchen towel just to mop up any surplus glue if we get it. And then we're going to need some green stuff. Now, green stuff is an epoxy. Games Workshop sell it, however it's much cheaper to buy it on eBay and other places, so have a look around to get yourself some green stuff. We are also going to need a pair of plastic clippers to clip off some surplus plastic, and a knife to go along with that. We are then going to need a drill or a pin vise, and we're going to need 2 drill bits. We're going to need, of course, a 2mm one for the big 2mm magnets, and if you plan to use the smaller ones, you're going to need a 1mm drill bit as well. Finally, I've got 2 extra tools here. We've got a little file and also my green stuff tool as well. These tools here are just going to help us get the magnets into the right position. So that is all the tools that we need. We are now ready to magnetise them. Okay, so first we're going to work on the gun section on the actual bike itself, so effectively this piece here. Now this piece just goes into the front. Now the thing to note when you put it onto the little flying stem is the position of the guns and how they're actually going to be. So we are going to want to put the guns in this position just there. So just bear in mind that when it's on the stand it's pointing forward or dipping down as such, so it's not going to be like this, it's going to be like this. So something just to bear in mind when you start drilling holes. So let's just take this out. Now I've already measured that effectively we're going to turn this upside down and we're going to drill a hole directly in the centre of this from a downwards position. That's the perfect angle for when it's on its flying stem. Now drilling a hole into a ball can be quite difficult, especially when you're first starting the hole. So what I suggest you do is actually get your knife and make a little indentation just where you want the actual drill bit to go. Now you need to be careful because you don't want to slip and obviously go into your finger, so be incredibly careful here. But find the centre point where you want the actual drill bit to go and just very gently just rotate the knife just to make a little starting point for the drill bit to go. So that's done on one side and then do the same on the other. Okay, so once you've done both of those, then take your 2mm drill bit, use that little hole that we've made as a starting point, and then we're going to very gently drill a hole into the ball. Now we're looking for the magnet to go in and be flush with the ball, so just gently drill it out. The way I do it is I'll drill a little bit, just take away the surplus bits of plastic that have come out and just check how deep the hole is. And just gradually do it, so don't go very quickly and accidentally drill all the way through the ball. Just gently drill it, keep checking the depth, get your magnet on your magnet topper and just put it into the hole just to check the depth, and just keep doing that until the magnet is flush. Okay, so that's the 2 holes drilled, and now the magnets go in there with no trouble at all and then nice and flush. Now before we glue the magnet into the actual sockets, we've got to drill some holes into the guns. Now the guns are quite easy to drill out because you've got the actual ball socket itself on the gun, so all we need to do is drill a hole into the bottom central position of that little dome. So again we're going to use our 2mm drill bit and we're going to gently drill out a little hole big enough for the magnet to go in. So again, just do it gently, make sure you don't drill too deep, but deep enough that the magnet can go in and be flush. So we're going to do that on both of the Gauze guns, and then we've got the tester guns as well, which again have that little ball socket. So let's just clean up the drill bit. There we go. So I'm going to drill a hole into here. You can always put a magnet into position just to make sure that it goes in flush, because you don't want the magnet to be sticking out of the hole. So actually it's better to drill the hole a bit deeper than not deep enough. In actual fact, this particular gun is hollow on the inside, so you might actually drill a reasonably big hole, but don't worry about that because we're going to fill it with some green stuff. There we go, I've gone all the way through. We're going to fill that with green stuff anyway, so that's not a problem. Now at this stage we're not going to magnetise the particle beamer because we're going to use different sized magnets for that. So for now just put that aside, and what we're going to do is put the magnets in all of these sections just here. Okay, so next we're going to get our green stuff, make 2 little balls of equal size for the yellow and the blue, and then we're going to mix it together to give us some green stuff. So just keep mixing this until it goes green, and then we are ready. Okay, so we've got our green stuff all mixed up. So what we're going to do is start by putting the magnets into this top section. And the reason for that is there's only 2 of these magnets going in this polarity, and there's a lot more going in the opposite way. And with my magnet topper, it's generally easier to put the magnets in with the topper this way rather than the other way. So effectively what I'm going to do is put the magnets which go into the gun this way, and then the magnets into this section, as there's only 2 of them, the opposite way. It doesn't really make any difference, it's just my preference. So we're going to first of all put a bit of green stuff into the hole. If we can get it in. There we go. Don't need too much, just a bit in there, just to make the magnet stick a little bit easier. We're then going to take some of our super glue and the magnets. I'm going to turn the magnets the other way so I know which polarity we're going. I'm then going to put some super glue onto the magnet. Now, you don't put the super glue onto the green stuff, because if you do that it will go hard and won't stick. So super glue on the magnet and then push it into the hole, and then just slide the magnet away. Get your tissue, just wipe off the surplus glue, and now just make sure that the magnet is nice and flush, it's not angled. We want this magnet to be in a flat position to the bottom, which it is. So that's one done. So now I'm going to do the same for the other one. Okay, so that's both magnets in. I'm now going to get my flat file and I'm just going to magnetise that onto the file. And because we've got that green stuff in there, this is movable, the magnets are movable, so I'm just going to make sure that the magnets are nice and flat so that we get a good angle once all the magnets are together. So that is looking pretty good. So that is that section done. Right, time to do the magnets in the guns themselves. So we're going to again put some green stuff into the hole. Now if your hole has drilled out into a hollow bit, then you will need a reasonable amount of green stuff. I'm just going to use my green stuff tool to just hook out the surplus green stuff. There we go, so that is in there, ready to glue in the magnet. And of course these magnets have to go in the opposite way, so I'm going to use my topper to make sure they go in the opposite way. And you can check that as well by getting the original piece, and that shouldn't magnetise here, because we know that once it goes into there it's going to be magnetising that way, so we can just double check that before we do any gluing. Alright, let's get some glue. So again we're going to put some glue onto the magnet. There we go. I love this gel glue, it's really good. And now we're going to push that magnet into the hole, not too far. Take off the surplus magnets, and now we're going to use this tool and push this down until it's flush. Don't push it down all the way into the hole, you just want it to be flush. And once that's done, we can then do the others. Okay, so let's do that again. So on the gauze weapon, the hole isn't quite as deep, so I'm just going to get a bit of green stuff and just put it into position with my tool. Just push it down like so, and then some magnet and glue. Some glue onto the magnet, and then push this down into position. Take away the magnets and then just flatten the magnet down so that it's nice and flush with the bottom of that dip. There we go. Okay, so before everything really dries, what you can do is place that section in there and then just pop your guns just into the magnetised positions. Now you may find that the guns might be slightly up and down, not exactly horizontal. Now arguably it doesn't make any difference, these guns could be going up and down as they fire, I suppose. However, if you do want them horizontal and they're not quite horizontal, it's at this stage which you can just manipulate that magnet into the hole at the right angle, so when it goes on it's horizontal. So that is those guns, and now let's have a look at the Tesla guns. There's 1 and 2. Now you can see this one is not quite horizontal. You can manipulate it a little bit just on the magnet. However, the other option is to just try and push that magnet, there you go, into position. Where it's still wet with that green stuff in there, it's easier to manipulate. So that's 2 gun options done. Now we need to look at the third one. Okay, so next up is the particle beamer. Of course, this isn't twin linked, there's only 1 gun, and the way it works is it has this little strut which goes into the gun, and these are supposed to be glued to the ball. So we need to magnetise this. Now if we use our 2mm drill bit and magnets, well, there's just not enough room to drill a 2mm hole in there without obliterating this whole area. So we're going to have to use 1mm magnets and a drill bit. And because we've got 2 magnetisation points, even though the magnets are going to be slightly weaker, because there's 2, it's going to be okay basically. So what we're going to do is swap out our drill bit. Okay, so now we have our 1mm drill bit, and we're going to take this piece, which is the reason why I didn't glue it onto the gun, because it would be much harder to drill a hole in there. We're going to go to the bottom of that ball joint. We're going to gently drill a hole in there with our 1mm piece. Now, we are planning to make this hole go all the way through the piece of plastic. So don't drill into your finger, just once you've got the hole started, just gently do it until you feel it come through, and then we have a hole in there. So let's do that on both sides. So we're going to drill right into the centre of the bottom of that dip, like so, until we get the drill piece all the way through. We've got a nice clean little hole. Okay, so now we're going to take our magnet topper. I've reduced the amount of magnets I've got on there just to make it easier. And I've got one of the 1x2mm magnets. When you put one on there, it's going to make it easier to put into the hole. Now, because we've used the correct drill bit size, 1mm, this magnet effectively should push straight into here without any super glue or anything else being needed. It should just push in and stay into position. Now don't forget to get the polarity correct. Again, it's on the gun, so we know using this topper it's just going to push in this way. So let's do that. Find the hole, push the magnet in and get it into the right position. Okay, it's quite tight, which is good. Come on then. There we go, it is in and it's nice and flush. It's a perfect fit. So let's do the same for the other side. So I've got one of those magnets. Just going to come in and just try to find that hole and push it in. There you go, that one went in very easily. So we are ready to glue this piece onto here because those magnets are now magnetised. How cool is that? Okay, so one thing to note when you go to put this into the gun, it's a very tight fit. So all you have to do is get your knife and just scrape a little bit of this plastic on the joint away. Just do that on both sides, just a little bit, and that will make space for this piece to glue into the gun. Okay, so let's just check it. We've got the small little pointy bit which goes at the back, and we should be able to just push that in now. There you go. So I'm going to do that, of course, with some glue. Okay, that's that section now glued onto the gun. Now just a little note here, these little magnets, if you find they are a bit loose when you push them into the hole, or if they come out when you magnetise it onto here, if that should happen, then just get some super glue, put the super glue in the hole and re-push the magnets in. Mine are a nice tight fit, but if you come across that problem, then yeah, just use some super glue. Right, so that is all the weapon options now magnetised. So let's have a look at the Wargear. Okay, so let's have a chat about the Wargear options. So we've already discussed the shield vanes here, which I've glued onto my model. And you get this selection of bits and pieces. Now, the way it's supposed to work, according to the instructions, of course, you can convert and build them however you like, but for this tutorial, we're doing it like the instructions. This one here, part number 49, you glue onto the bottom section here. That's where it's supposed to go, and of course I've already done that on mine. And then you have three options. You've got this big massive one which goes on the back, which actually does nothing, so that's supposed to be just like the standard tomb blade. You then have this section here, which is for both extra options. That's the shadow looms and also the nebula scopes. Then the nebula scopes have this section going across, and the shadow looms have this section here coming up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to magnetise all three of these options onto the back of our tomb blade. Okay, so let's start with this big one, which in my opinion would make a great shield vane, but however it's not, it doesn't do anything, just looks cool. Now that actually pushes into the hole nice and secure. However, because we want to magnetise them, we are going to put a magnet into that hole. So what we're going to do is start off by drilling a 2mm hole into that hole, effectively just making it a bit bigger and allowing us to put in a 2mm magnet. So I'm just going to gently drill out that hole. It doesn't take too much. We've got our magnet and it's quite a tight fit. I'm not actually going to push it in, but I can see physically that that hole is deep enough for the magnet to go all the way in. And then we're going to take this section here and we are going to cut the tab off. I'm going to cut it all the way down so that it's flat against the little curved section. So with my knife I'm just going to gradually take that little section off until it's flat, like so. There you go. Then I'm going to drill a hole where that little stub was. So I'm just going to find the centre. You can use a small drill or the knife first if you want. I'm just going to go straight in with this big drill. Make a little hole, just make sure I'm in the middle, which I am, and then continue to drill out that hole until I can get a 2mm magnet in it. Okay, so that's that hole drilled out. Now, just like with the guns, I'm going to put the reverse polarity magnet into here, because there's only one magnet going in that way, and then I can use the topper for all of the other pieces. So we're going to turn this around like this, and then we're going to put that into there, using some green stuff of course first. Okay, so we're going to put a tiny bit of green stuff just in here, there, and then we're going to get our magnets and some super glue. I'm just going to put some glue onto the magnet and then put that into the hole, and we're looking to push it in until it's flush, like so, and then take the magnets away, and we could just use our tool just to gently push it all the way in, like so. Right, that is that one done. Okay, so now we're going to take this piece and we're going to do the same. Pop a little bit of green stuff in there, get some super glue, pop this onto the magnet, and then push it into the hole, and again we want this to be flush. In she goes. Excellent. Now that is magnetised onto there. Right, next piece of Wargear. Okay, so the next pieces of Wargear actually use the same one section. It's changed by the top piece, so we need to magnetise this, and then we need to magnetise both of those onto this. So first of all, let's magnetise this onto the actual tomb blade. Okay, so I'm going to start off by clipping off the little nodule, which we're no longer going to use. I'm going to turn it the other way up, where we've got the indentation of the hole, and we're just going to drill a 2mm hole right the way through this piece. We're going to put one magnet in, which is going to magnetise both sides of this section. So we're just going to drill all the way through this piece. There we go. Turn it up the other way, and we're just going to tidy this up with our knife. So just take off the surplus plastic. We're looking for this to be flush. There we go. So now we can put a magnet in there. Right, now we're going to magnetise that onto there. So I'm going to put the magnet all the way in. So let's make sure we got the polarity the right way, which we have. We're going to need some glue. So pop some glue onto here, like so. And then pop that into the hole. Spread the magnet, spread the glue around the hole. Push the magnet in, and then take the other magnets out and just make sure that that is nice and flush in that hole. There we go. Right, let that dry a bit. We will be back. Okay, that is now dry. What I'm going to do is I'm going to just take away a little bit of this plastic on the underside here, just to try and get the magnet as flush as I can with this side, so it's flush on both sides, just so we get a nice magnetisation when we put it onto here. There we go, look at that. And of course now we've got a magnet on this side, so now we need to magnetise the last two Wargear options. Okay, so the shadow loom first. What we need to do is drill a 2mm hole in a central position at the bottom of that section. So I'm going to use my drill. I'm going to find the centre position and gently drill out a hole. Make sure I'm in the middle, which I am. I'm going to continue to drill that out. We want a big enough hole to get that 2mm magnet all the way in so that it's flush. Go very careful here. There is some room for error on this particular section, but again, just go gently, screw in a little bit, check the depth, and keep going until you've got a big enough hole. Okay, there you go, that's the hole drilled out, and the magnet will go in there and be flush. Right, the next one is slightly harder because there isn't too much room for error and it's quite delicate. So this, of course, is the shadow looms. Okay, so the shadow loom, as I said, this is the hardest bit to drill. So what we're going to do is hold it in a position where we're not going to break it. So hold it on one side. We're going to use our index finger just to sort of position it so that we can put pressure on it, but without damaging anything. And then we're looking to put a 2mm hole again in the central position. Now there isn't too much room for error here, so you are going to have to be very careful and just gradually drill out a hole. Now, as I said, the room for error is quite small, so you do not want to go too fast and drill a massive hole right the way through. If you accidentally do that, then you'll just have to touch it back up with some green stuff. However, if you just drill it a little bit at a time, you will get there. So just a drill a few times, check the depth, and then just keep doing that until you have a deep enough hole to put the magnet. Okay, there you go. I've drilled out the hole. It's deep enough for the magnet to go flush, and I haven't drilled all the way through. So definitely possible, just be careful. Right, now it's time to glue the magnets into those two pieces. Let's start with this one. So we're going to need a little bit of green stuff just in the hole. You won't need too much here because the holes aren't necessarily going to be huge for loads of green stuff to go in there, so just a tiny bit of green stuff. Get your super glue and your magnet, put some super glue onto the magnet, and then push the magnet into the hole. Slide the magnets off, and then just push the magnet in so that it's flush with that piece. Excellent, and then we're going to do the same for this one here, but we are going to use just a very tiny piece of green stuff. We don't want too much because the hole isn't that big. However, the green stuff will help it bond, and also it will help stick the magnet in there using your magnet stick. Right, let's get some super glue onto our magnet. Now you're going to push again. Make sure you don't break the thing. Hold it very carefully. Push in the magnet, slide them off, and then just push in the magnet all the way so that's flush. Excellent, all done. Let's just give that a few minutes to dry. Okay, so that's all dried, so now we can magnetise that section onto the back. We can put on our nebula scopes, or we can take that off and we've got our shadow looms. Okay, so lastly, the base. So we've got our flying base, which at the moment we can just push into the hole. It's actually quite a reasonable fit. However, over time and the potential of it being snapped off into the hole is quite high. I think it will be best to magnetise this base. I've magnetised all of my Necron flying bases. Here's one which I've done earlier, so we're going to duplicate what we've done there. Okay, so first let's take the base itself. We're going to cut off the little thin section of the stem, like so, and then we're going to make this as flat and parallel or horizontal as we can. We need this nice and flat because we're going to obviously put the magnet on it. Okay, like so. Now we are actually going to use some bigger magnets, which I forgot to say at the beginning of the video, so sorry about that. We're going to use some 3x2mm magnets for this one. So we're going to put a tiny bit of green stuff on here. Now I say tiny, we don't want to fill the whole top area with green stuff because it won't make a great bond, but we do want a little bit of green stuff on there to help the bond for super glue to the plastic, like so. There we go, so we've got a little bit of green stuff. Right, let's get a magnet. Right, I've got my 3x2mm magnets. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take one of these magnets and put it onto the top of that flying base. Now, a little tip for you, if you have an army that's got magnetised bases, it's always a good idea to have the polarity of this magnet on all of the models exactly the same so that the bases are interchangeable. So on my Necron bases, my magnets go on this way, so I need to glue it that way down. So I'm going to take one magnet off, there we go, I'm going to hold it, and then I'm going to put it onto the end of my little file. So it's the metal file, so there's metal under the handle, but because of the sponge, that connection is actually quite light. It's going to be really useful for helping it let go. However, with that green stuff on there, it should let go quite easily. So let's get some super glue, pop that onto the magnet, like so. And now I'm going to be looking to push this onto the top of that, and because A, I've got the green stuff, and B, because the foam is stopping that being very powerfully magnetised to the handle, I can actually just put it on and move the handle. Now, just to make sure that magnet's in a central position, just going to budge it a little bit and then push it down, and there we go. So I'm going to leave that to dry. Okay, so whilst that's drying, I'm going to take this section, which is where the little stem will actually go into, and I'm going to drill out a 2mm hole. It's pretty much a 2mm hole already, to be fair, but there you go, just open it up enough so that we can get a magnet in there, and it's going to push in quite nicely. So let's get some glue just to give it that extra bond. Just put a tiny bit of glue on there. We already know that the polarity is this way with my base topper system, so let's just put that magnet into the hole, just gently put it in, and then flatten it down so that it's nice and flush. There we go. Okay, so that is all dry, and now we have a magnetised tomb blade. How cool is that? Now if you did want to make this a little bit more secure, you could go in and add a bigger flat magnet. Got some very powerful 5x1mm magnets. I could just glue that in on top of that magnet, and that will just help give it a little bit more stability. I can't really tell if I need to do that yet until I've got all of the weapon options on there. I think it's going to be alright as it is though. Okay, so lastly, I'm just going to take this little section and I'm going to glue that into place, and then I'm going to show you the final result. Okay, there you go. So in the end, I didn't have to do anything with the magnets. That magnet is fine once it's all put together. We have our 3 tomb blades with the 3 different weapon options and the different Wargear options. I really hope that video was useful to you. Let me know in the comments box below if it was. And if you want to see more Necron magnetising tutorials, I'll link you up to my playlist just there, and here's the rest of the Necron Tomb Blade videos that I've recently made. And if you're not subscribed yet, start now and hit the IDIC beer icon. Beam me up!